Can a dead man stand trial? In the year 897, in the heart of Rome, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was a grotesque reality. A pope, long dead and buried, was dug up, dressed in sacred vestments, and propped up on a throne to face his accusers. This is the story of the Cadaver Synod, one of the most bizarre and macabre episodes in the history of the papacy. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to the chaotic world of 9th century Italy. The Carolingian Empire, once a beacon of stability under Charlemagne, had fractured. Noble factions in and around Rome were locked in a vicious struggle for power, and the papacy was their ultimate prize. Whoever controlled the pope controlled vast lands, immense wealth, and divine authority. Popes were made and unmade, not by holy calling, but by political scheming and brute force. Two main factions were vying for control: the powerful dukes of Spoleto, and a faction supporting Arnulf of Carinthia, the East Frankish king. Our story centers on two men, two rival popes, Pope Formosus and Pope Stephen VI. Formosus was a respected but controversial figure. Before becoming pope in 891, he had been excommunicated for political reasons, then reinstated. His papacy was marked by his attempt to break free from the suffocating grip of the Speletan faction. They had forced him to crown one of their own, Lambert of Spoleto, as Holy Roman Emperor. But Formosus had other plans. Secretly, he invited Arnulf of Carinthia to invade Italy and liberate the papacy. Arnulf marched on Rome, was crowned emperor by Formosus, but then suffered a stroke and had to retreat. Shortly after, in 896, Pope Formosus died, leaving behind a city seething with resentment. This is where the conflict explodes. The Speletan faction, led by Lambert's formidable mother, Agiltrude, roared back into power. They installed their own man on the papal throne, Pope Stephen VI. For them, Formosus wasn't just a political rival, he was a traitor. His invitation to a foreign king was an unforgivable betrayal. They weren't content with his death. They wanted to erase his legacy, nullify his every act, and make an example of him so terrifying that no one would ever dare cross them again. Revenge was the motive, and the stage for this revenge would be a formal church trial, a trial against a corpse. And so we arrive at the turning point, the Cadaver Synod, in January 897. Under Stephen's orders, Formosus's 9-month-old corpse was exhumed from its tomb. The decomposing body was clothed in papal robes and seated upon a throne in the Basilica of St. John Lateran. Pope Stephen VI presided over the macabre spectacle, screaming accusations at the silent defendant. A young deacon, terrified, was forced to hide behind the throne and answer on the corpse's behalf. The charges were read: perjury, ambition, and illegally seizing the papacy. The verdict was, of course, a foregone conclusion. Formosus was found guilty. The trial was a horrifying performance of power. The papal vestments were ripped from his body. The 3 fingers of his right hand, the fingers he used for blessings, were hacked off. His papacy was declared null and void, meaning all his appointments, ordinations, and decrees were invalidated, throwing the entire church administration into chaos. Finally, his desecrated body was dragged through the streets of Rome and hurled into the Tiber River. But this act of ultimate desecration backfired spectacularly. The people of Rome were horrified. This wasn't justice. It was a sacrilegious circus. The city's delicate political balance shattered. The ground literally shook. A later earthquake was seen as a sign of God's wrath, damaging the very basilica where the trial took place. Public opinion turned violently against Stephen VI. The mob rose up, seized him, and threw him into prison. A few months later, he was strangled to death in his cell. The aftermath was just as chaotic. The popes who followed Stephen were caught in the crossfire. One reinstated Formosus's acts, another nullified them again. Fishermen eventually recovered Formosus's body from the Tiber, and he was given a proper reburial at St. Peter's Basilica. The church eventually condemned the practice of putting the dead on trial, but the damage was done. The cadaver synod became a symbol of the papacy's darkest hour, a time when the Holy Office was dragged through the mud of worldly politics. So, what can we learn from this ghastly episode? The cadaver synod is a chilling lesson in how far people will go for power. It shows how political hatred can corrupt even the most sacred institutions, twisting faith into a tool for revenge. When leaders become so consumed by destroying their enemies, they end up destroying their own legitimacy and sowing chaos that lasts for generations. It's a timeless warning about the dangers of fanaticism and the corrupting nature of absolute power. The silent, rotting Pope on the throne serves as an eternal reminder that when we let hatred desecrate our principles, we risk losing our own humanity in the process. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into history's dark corners as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive. See you next time.